All right, good morning. I am going to open the staff hearing officer special meeting for January 17th, 2024. First, we're going to start out with preliminary matters, requests for continuances, withdrawals, postponements, or addition of ex-agenda items. I do not have any at the moment. So moving on to announcements and appeals. I do have one quick announcement that the appeal of the staff hearing officer approval of two setback modifications for 225 Equestrian Ave went to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission ended up upholding the staff hearing officer's approval of those two modifications. And then, so that we shall see if, well, just a quick announcement on that. And other than that, I don't have any more announcements. And now I'd like to open it up to public comment for items not on today's agenda. So if there's anyone who wishes to speak on items not on today's agenda, now is the time to do so. I don't see anyone in the audience who wishes to speak at this time. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone via Zoom who is raising their hand?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll go ahead and close public comment, general public comment, and can go to our first agenda item, which is 725 Westmont Road. This is a 7,569 square foot site. It's currently developed with a 1,776 square foot single unit residence. The project consists of a request to permit the previous demolition of a 400 square foot carport and trellis and to construct a new 418 square foot detached garage. The discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer at this hearing is a front setback modification to allow the garage to encroach into the front south setback. And this project is exempt from further environmental review. Pursuant to California Environmental Quality Act guidelines, section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures. And I think I'll leave it at that. We have Ms. Burkhardt, who is here to present the project. So whenever you're ready, and I'd just like to ask Ms. Gu if you could switch screens for us.
Thank you, Ms. Kokinda. I'm here along with the property owner, Mr. Kellis, and I'll walk you through the project. First of all, just looking at the site, it's located up on Westmont Road. This is the subject site here, and some photos kind of orient you. The lots are terraced side to side as they go down the hill, just to give you a little, so they're terraced downward in this direction. So the proposed project is to add just a new two-car garage. And to give you a little background, the site was developed back in 1956. It included an attached two-car garage here, which was later converted to living space, and a covered carport and a trellis were added in this area here, which were subsequently demolished somewhere between 2015 and 2020, just based on aerials. So this garage is to replace that parking, which was never officially replaced. It's been used as uncovered parking, but nothing official, according to the city, has been done to replace that parking. So this, let me just walk through the floor plans here. Well, here's the elevations, just a simple garage with a side man door and window. Just a basic floor plan. It meets the minimum interior dimensions. Here's a roof plan. And just some photos. This is the site as was approved, and then this is the proposal here, rendering.
Pardon my interruption. Was that part of the packet? I didn't see that.
I think I added it. Yeah, like I received some renderings kind of late, which I thought would help.
No, I had a couple of sheets that printed blank, but I didn't know
okay.
in my staff report. So that might have been those.
It could have been. Yeah, I'm
all
not
right,
quite
thank you.
certain. So yeah, I think that helps give the visual of what's approved and what's being requested. I'll go back to the site plan. So the proposed garage does encroach 5 feet into the setback. Garages have a larger setback in this zone. They have a 20-foot setback where the residence has a 15-foot setback. So it's encroaching 5 feet as proposed. The site is constrained, as you can see, by existing development and also that topography I discussed, how the lot is terracing. It's higher up here and lower down here. This really is the only logical location for the parking on the site. It needs to be street facing, and in order to meet those interior dimensions that it meets, it ends up encroaching. So the only real alternative is to push it back a bit, attach it to the house, which doesn't fully solve the problem. It would still encroach a bit and would take out 2 windows. There's a bedroom and a bathroom. So maybe a little egress issue there, so just not desirable to push it back and attach it. So for those reasons, staff is supportive. It's really the only feasible location. It's otherwise consistent with zoning, provides 2 covered parking spaces as the code intends. And as you mentioned, it is exempt from CEQA. It's a negligible expansion of an existing residential use. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Let me know if you have any questions, of course.
Thank you, Ms. Burkhart. And I'd like to invite the applicant up if you wish to add anything or kind of walk me through any of your thoughts as part of this request. And I'm sorry, even though it's just us in here for our recording, we have to make it a little more formal. So I would need you to speak into a microphone. It's really just so our recording picks it up. So if you could just introduce yourself for the record, and forgive me, I think I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Ellen Kokinda. I'm the staff hearing officer. But please, and there's a little button in the middle for the microphone, and the light will turn on green, and just right there. Perfect. And if you speak into it, again, our recording will be happy. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. I'm James Kellis, the owner of 725 Westmont Road, the applicant for this garage. And Ms. Burkhart did a great job presenting the project. I really have very little to add other than to just reiterate the fact that if the garage were pushed up against the house, we wouldn't just lose a window from the bedroom, we would lose the only window from the bedroom, which is an egress window. The only other outer wall for that bedroom is where the closet is, and it's a small bedroom to begin with, so that would have to be reconfigured and would reduce the utility of that bedroom considerably. And of course it would be expensive. So putting the garage right where the carport was is the only feasible option here. The other thing is that we're going from a 20-foot setback to a 15-foot setback, but the right-of-way on Westmont Road is 60 feet wide, which I was told some time ago was because back in 1956 sidewalks were contemplated. And so even though it's 15 to 20 feet sounds like a major change, with a 60-foot wide right-of-way there, it's really a negligible impact on the aesthetics of the neighborhood and zero impact on the ingress and egress compared to the carport. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And yes, Mr. Kellis. And now I'm going to open it up to public comment. This is public comment for 725 Westmont Road. If there's anyone who wishes to speak at this time, please raise your hand. I don't have anyone in the audience wishing to speak, and I didn't receive any written correspondence about this project. Ms. Gu, do we have anyone attending via Zoom who wishes to speak?
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands at all.
Okay, I'll close public comment and then shift back. So, couple questions. First of all, I think you've actually answered most of my questions. Ms. Burkhart, do you mind going back to the simulation? That's very helpful. I think I was trying to understand the context of, kind of by adding the mass to that particular location, like how does that kind of fit in, and looking at the kind of the patterns of development within the neighborhood. So I can say I did go out on site. Just walked up and down the street. I have a strong sense of Westmont Road and kind of the existing development there. Is this kind of, I mean, this is truly the intention of what you're going for in terms of kind of the aesthetics, how it fits in in what your proposal is?
Yes, the rendering here is really a pretty good approximation of
Okay.
what we intend. And the house across the street has a similar configuration. I don't know if you recall that. And then a couple doors up from that house, there is actually a house which is very similar in this configuration.
I saw that.
And
This is
I think
a
that's.
familiar site. Okay.
Yeah, and I think that house up the street is sort of what we're going for, and I think it's one of the nicer houses on the street, actually.
Okay. And then just curious, you didn't, you could have gone back to a potential carport, but you went with the garage. What was the rationale for that?
You know, it's just aesthetically, it's much nicer for the neighborhood to have an enclosed garage. Also, you know, you have bicycles, surfboards, tools, all of those things that currently don't really have a proper home. Although there is a there was mandated interior storage as part of the garage conversion, but that's really inadequate for really what, you know, is the real lifestyle of people in Santa Barbara.
Yeah. And then I noticed, again, kind of imagining this garage kind of jutting out. This project isn't subject to single-family design board review because it doesn't trigger design review because the alterations are less than 17 feet. It's not in the Hillside Design District. It doesn't have a significant slope. So I was just curious, again, in this rendering, it looks like the intention is for the window on the side to match the existing windows of the residence, but in the plans, it shows kind of a slider. What's your intention? Are you trying to match the windows or?
Yes, it will be the same brand of window and the same color.
With like the same mullions
Yeah,
and, okay,
yes.
okay, because your plans show something else.
Yes, you know, I communicated with the architect after that. And
Okay.
actually, I'm going to supply the window because it was, the windows when this house was remodeled after the T-fire are from a local supplier. I mean, they aren't locally made, but
Right.
because the windows are a bit unique. They're
Yeah.
they're kind of reddish anodized aluminum. And so
okay.
I believe it's very important to get a perfect match there.
Well, I think just when I went out on site, again, it's like if this building is going to jut out further, then that you would be catching sight of it. And so it just, you know, I think you'll have a more uniform design by having a window, even though that window is not within the setback. It was just kind of my commentary for you to consider, but it sounds like you've already considered that. But you'll have to update the plans just to reflect the specific window that you intend to have. Similarly, I see here, one of my questions was kind of what is your intention for lighting? Because you're obligated to have, I'm pretty sure the building code requires lights for the front of it where the garage doors are. And so, you know, something similar to kind of match the existing residence, I'm guessing what you're going for. My only concern about lighting is that some people try to put in fixtures that kind of then light up the entire neighborhood on the other side. So I would just really be conscious of, I want to make sure that, you know, there's not going to be light trespass that kind of does that. So again, I've seen situations in other neighborhoods when you go around with the garage lights of where it can be a little bit, you know, you could be way across on the other side of the street and kind of looking out at a baseball field. So just a nuisance thought that I had. But ultimately, I can tell you that, again, this is a super helpful rendering, so I kind of understand this really falls in line with the patterns of development within the neighborhood and kind of how it steps up. I don't think it will be as noticeable, and there's like a lot of different context for these areas. Like some have garages that are street facing, some have carports or trellises. You've got every single garage door looks different up and down the street. I mean, it's really kind of an interesting study of garage doors that I've seen on Westmont Road. But I also appreciate your rationale for not wanting to cover up your the bedroom window, because if one being just the egress window. So I can see how this is a particular, this is a hardship, or you need to be able to put in adequate parking, covered parking at this time, and you want to have a situation where it still kind of maintains light and air. So I am supportive of your request for the front setback modification. I think the one thing I didn't talk about or ask you about is, can you tell me some of your intentions for landscaping? Because that was one of my other concerns. It's a little stark up front right now, and I can imagine it just is full sun all the time, and, going downhill. It's not like that's retaining a lot of water. But I'm just kind of wondering what your intention is, or if there's any kind of proposed landscaping you were hoping for to kind of soften just the mass and the bulk, given that it's going to be pulled out that 5 feet.
Right, yes, that's a great question. So right now, it was originally grass, old-fashioned 1950s grass. Haven't watered that, just let that die. It's a little aesthetically displeasing right now. We've mulched it. But we're waiting to do the garage project before doing the landscaping, because we don't want the heavy machinery running over the garden. But the intention for our landscaping is to do drought-tolerant Mediterranean landscaping. I have a landscaping consultant who's currently working on the back, and we have a plan, a plan for the front as well. It's just sort of conceptual plan at this point. But we're really eager to get the garage in so that we can get that landscaping in.
Sure. Okay.
And I think the way we'll have sort of, rather than a lawn, we'll have some, shrubs and perennials and that sort of thing, sort of to deal with the slope that's there, which isn't really shown in the render. I mean, the rendering, they just show the grass.
It's kind of on an angle.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Just for simplicity, the rendering shows flat grass, which is not actual reality there.
Right. Okay, well, so I can go ahead and make the findings that this modification is consistent with the front setback modification is consistent with the general purpose of our zoning ordinance. And as Ms. Burkhart wrote in her staff report, and it's necessary to secure an appropriate improvement on the lot. The site is constrained with the existing development, trying to, propose covered parking that meets the interior, all the standards of our transportation planning requirements. And recognizing that by pushing back the development, it would still be encroaching into the front setback, and it would also get rid of that egress window. So I'm supportive for that reason. I would like to add the conditions that, again, this is just kind of for peace of mind that that the lighting on the front of the garage be shielded so that it's not trespassing across the street, or I'm really mostly worried about the neighbors across the street, and that I'd like to add just a second condition that that you provide landscaping, and I'm not going to dictate what that looks like. It sounds like you're already kind of planning landscaping, but just something to buffer the new development in front. And so, Ms. Burkhart, do you want me to be more specific to that? Or, I mean, it's, I think I just think something better than just what's currently, like right now, like any kind of just like, again, I feel like it could use a little buffering, just so it's not as prominent,
Yeah.
but I don't really want to dictate the design. I really want this applicant to be able to manage that with their landscapers.
Okay. Mr. Callis mentioned it would be drought tolerant. And would you want to see that as part of the building submittal then? Something shown on the plans or
I think,
just?
I'm like, maybe I don't need to, I don't really want to condition it. Like, again, I know that the intention is there. I think, I don't need to add that condition. Let's scrap the condition, but I'm just asking, for your neighbors, for yourself, if you would, I think, address that. I think it will, again, fit nicer, like, up and down the street, and not be as stark. So that's my decision. And my action is appealable within 10 calendar days. Anyone can submit an appeal within those 10 calendar days, or any member of the Planning Commission could suspend my decision and pull it within that same timeline. But otherwise, I wish you well, and thank you for coming in and having a nice project.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it. Good luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally hear you with the lighting. I think one of the treasures of that area of Santa Barbara is the rural atmosphere.
And we have ordinances. We have ordinances that are night sky compliant, but it's, again, sometimes I just add that for peace of mind and, again, for my own. But yeah, I really appreciate you considering matching the windows so that it matches your house, and then having lighting that's consistent with what you currently have. I think it'll just bring it all together, and it'll be a really nice design. Yeah, great. Good luck. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Goo, do you mind switching over screens? And thank you. All right, we're going to move on to item B, 711 Bath Street. This is an 8,995 square foot site. It's currently developed with 2 one-story residential units and a detached single-car garage. The project consists of converting the front 815 square foot residence, Unit 1, to a short-term rental hotel use, and the project would also address miscellaneous violations identified in ENF 2023-00142, comprised of but not limited to plumbing, piping, electrical, installation of a water heater, and conversion of the garage to a laundry room without a permit. The garage is proposed to be returned to its original permitted condition. Refer to Exhibits A and B for project plans in the applicant's letter, respectively. So the discretionary application under the jurisdiction of the staff hearing officer at this hearing is an interior setback modification to allow for a change of use within the required 6-foot side yard setback. And just noting that this project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under Section 15303, new construction or conversion of small structures of the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. We have Ms. Plummer here today to present the project. Ms. Gu, do you mind switching back screens? Okay, Ms. Plummer, whenever you're ready, please go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Gokinda. I'm Pilar Plummer, Associate Planner with the City of Santa Barbara Planning and Zoning Division, and I'll be giving the staff presentation for this project. So as you noted in the project description, the purpose of this meeting is to discuss a request for an interior setback modification to allow a change of use within the 6-foot interior side yard setback. The project involves conversion of this existing front building, which is a single family residence, to a short-term rental. And as you can see on the site plan, the existing distance of that residence to the interior property line is 3 feet and 10.5 inches. Before I go to the photos, I do just want to give an overview of the site development. So it's a fairly narrow lot on Bath Street, and the property is developed with 2 residential units. This front building that is proposed to be converted. This back building is also a single unit residence. and a detached garage. I do think it's important to note that all existing structures on the property are non-conforming to interior side yard setbacks. So this back building, as you can see, is also encroaching in the 6-foot setback. And the garage existing encroaches in the other side yard setback. I did note in the staff report that the property is under enforcement for conversion of the garage to a laundry room. With this project, they'll be returning it to a garage as is permitted on the site. So going to the photos. The photo to the right here is a view of the project site viewed from Bath Street. You can see the adjacent multi-unit residential property as well as a view of the building, which is proposed to be converted to a short-term rental. These are some additional photos. This is a back view looking towards Bath Street of the short-term rental. This is Unit 2. Again, Unit 2, there's no changes proposed to that unit. And some additional photos. This is, again, a view of 711 Bath Street, the unit being converted, and this is the adjacent property. There is an existing driveway separation between the two properties. And going back to the site plan, I also think it's important to note that the property butts Mission Creek, which you can see at the top here, and that has a 25-foot creek buffer for development, which limits some of the development potential on the lot. So there's no changes proposed to the unit itself. The project involves just a straight conversion, change of use, which is necessitating the interior setback modification. Short-term rentals, otherwise known as vacation rentals, are considered a hotel use, which is a non-residential use, as they provide overnight accommodations for a period of 30 consecutive calendar days or less for payment. And as I said, the existing building is 3 feet and 10.5 inches away from the interior property line. I do want to note the zoning ordinance does allow for conversion from residential uses to a non-residential use for non-conforming buildings in some particular cases. Really what that means is for specific uses. Some of those include community garden, a live-work unit, market garden, or neighborhood market. Because those uses have specific standards and criteria that they have to meet. For example, size limitations, hours of operation. For live work, only specific types of non-residential uses are allowed within that particular unit type. So essentially, the ordinance allows for conversion of those because they are more likely to be compatible with a residential neighborhood. This project doesn't meet any of those exceptions because it is a short-term rental. However, it is in the RMH zone, and the RMH zone, residential multi-unit housing and hotels, does allow for hotels in the zone. Again, the purpose of this particular hearing isn't to say that a short-term rental is allowed or not allowed in a zone, but specifically for the encroachment change of use. So the intent of the RMH zone is also to preserve residential character and control uses that would not be harmonious with housing. In general, the neighborhood makeup is comprised of residential and multi-unit housing. However, I do want to point out that the adjacent property abutting the project site is developed as a mixed-use property. It contains residential and it contains a market, a little corner market. Again, as I already said, there was to the right of the property is a multi-unit development. Some site constraints are that, again, this is just a conversion project. They're not looking to do any additional improvements to the buildings from the exterior or demolition. So the existing site contains buildings which are all non-conforming to setbacks. There's also the Mission Creek development buffer at the back, which would restrict some of the developable envelope on the property. Removal of this particular encroachment here would be hardship to the applicant. As they noted in their applicant letter, the rooms within that portion of the building include a living room and kitchen, so those are pretty key elements of the existing structure. I also think it's important to note that were this building to be demolished and they were to do a new non-residential structure, brand new, they would be required to have a 12-foot interior setback rather than the 6-foot that's currently being applied. And also on the other side, they do have a driveway which accesses the garage. So there are some constraints concerning that. That said, staff is not supportive of the modification requested today. Although the structure is non-conforming, the conversion creates the potential for a conflict of uses within proximity to one another, given that the neighborhood is predominantly residential. And the rooms that encroach our kitchen and living room, which are generally active spaces. That said, the side is fairly narrow. Again, it's 3 feet, 10.5 inches. So the likelihood of patrons for the short-term rental congregating there is pretty unlikely. As well as there is the driveway buffer separating this property from the adjacent residential property. Additionally, as I said, the project would not provide adequate buffering between adjacent land uses, and it doesn't meet any of the other exceptions that would allow for a change of use to a different type of non-residential use within the zone. So in terms of environmental review, if the project is approved, it would qualify for an exemption, as I outlined in the staff report, per SEQA section 15303 for conversion of the building. However, since staff is recommending denial, section 15270, and that information was also included in the staff report, is recommended. If the staff hearing officer does not agree with staff's recommendation, staff included a condition regarding the discovery of unanticipated archaeological resources to be included. And that essentially concludes my presentation. The owner and applicant are here, so I'll turn it over to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Plummer. I'd like to invite you all up to the dais, our official dais. We got a lot of wires up here. If you wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves for the record and then walking me through your project and the different considerations and your specific requests today. Thank you. Whenever you're ready. And I think she turned the mic off, so you might have to press the button in the middle. There you go. And it'll light up green. There you go. It's live.
Good morning. I'm Amy Von Protz, applicant. I'm sorry, agent, sorry.
I'm David excuse me, David Chase, applicant.
It's early this morning. I haven't talked that. I mean, this is the most talking I've done all day. Okay, go ahead.
Daniel Girdler, applicant.
Thank you.
So thank you for Pilar for city for the staff reviewing. We thought you did a great job. However, we feel there's a couple things that we feel we really need to emphasize to ask for this modification. First of all, the house has been here for 87 years. It has not, and over those 87 years, it looks like setbacks have been increased over. So I don't really think that. I really think that needs to be taken into consideration. Second of all, she said residential character. So we are not proposing any exterior changes, any changes to this building at all. So if it's residential character and means how the house looks, it's still going to look the same today that it's we want to talk about the restraints of this property. As you can see by the hatched area on the top, we have to, Mission Creek is a big restraint, and also the getting to the garage is another one. We have to go all the way to the back of the property to get to the garage, and we have to have appropriate turning space to get out, because we can't back out onto Bass Street. So we really don't have any other really places to do anything else. Finally, I think that is, oh yeah, the last one thing that I'd like to point out is, per staff, to the where the modification is going to be, there is a driveway next door, so we are not going to be right next to another home, and I think that needs to be considered, and just the proximity to the property line is not going. I can't see people hanging out there because it's just it's a thin spot, a thin portion. So I would ask that you would highly consider giving us a modification for this project. I think we've given you a lot of good points and would hope you consider it. David, do you want
Is there anything else you would like to add, or?
You want to add anything?
Yeah, my only other thought was that as we try to press forward with this, if, thinking about it in terms of if the house hadn't been built 87 years ago where it was and instead was built 3 feet over, then this wouldn't be here, because we wouldn't need to ask for this modification, and there'd be no other roadblocks to us moving forward with getting this permit. So I guess that, I think, is worth considering, because it doesn't really, I think we've proven that being 3 feet to the right instead of the left really has no impact on our request, on the use of the property. And we are in a zone that allows for this use. And it's a small, under 1,000 square foot unit. So it's a very small request as far as that kind of change of use. I don't know, Daniel, any other?
Yeah, maybe just to add, seeing as the reason we are here specifically is about the modification to the setback, to David's point, it's been here 87 years, not much can get done about that. On one side is already mixed use with a driveway buffer, and on the multi-unit, I should say, with a driveway buffer. And on the other side is mixed use. So it seems pretty much about as good a scenario as you could get for a property in this situation that's already that old and isn't going to change anytime soon. Existing non-conforming scenario would be my thoughts.
I think that concludes our presentation.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to turn it over for public comment. And so this is for item 711, item B, 711 Bass Street. I'm going to open up public comment. Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak on this particular item? Or anyone attending via Zoom? Ms. Gu.
On checking Zoom, I do not see any raised hands for this particular item.
Okay, I do want to acknowledge that I did receive written correspondence from Sarah Murdoch and Vanessa Rencher, and that will be that were distributed prior to this hearing, and I've read both of their comments and submissions, and that will be part of the public record. And if no one is moving to speak, I'll go ahead and close public comment for this item. And then I do have some questions. And Ms. Plummer, can you come up here too, please? Sorry, we might need to, if you want to pull a chair around, we can just, why don't we do that so nobody has to be displaced? We have extra, yeah. So I was just kind of curious, so I might jump around, but can you, let's see, what was your rationale for no additional improvements on the site? I mean, you're converting this to a non-residential use. You are still have a residence for Unit 2 in the back, and you're reestablishing the garage to abate the enforcement. I'm just curious why what considerations went into not making any additional changes?
We felt that, if you look at the floor plan again, we felt that there was really no reason to make any changes, just to, I mean, it's providing everything that we need for a short-term rental.
And I guess what about buffering between the two, the front, the proposed vacation rental and the rear unit?
Are you asking why we're not
Kind-
putting like a fence, or is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just kind of like what you're, I mean, you described not doing any kind of, like, no additional improvements to the site. And I'm just kind of curious why, given, as you're changing the use of something, kind of what the, if you have a resident who's there all the time and then you have someone who's coming in and out, just a short term, the vacation rental in general has, there's a different sensibility to how that operates as a non-residential use. And, it's not like you're going to see the same person, have a neighbor necessarily. You're going to have different neighbors depending. So just kind of what the rationale was for not proposing any other additional changes, and mostly between, again, the front unit 1 and unit 2 in the rear.
Well, there's actually no, if you look at the floor plan, there's no doors between, on the back of our unit. So there would be really no reason for them to go out into the back. And then if you look back at the site plan too, there is a fence around the front of the property where the entrance is. There's a fence all the way around here. So there would be really no reason why these people would go back into the back.
Right, okay. Curious, Ms. Plummer, how was it established which unit the garage belonged to?
Thank you, Ms. Gokinda. So according to city records, there's only ever been that one single car garage, and essentially it was dedicated to the back unit because it's in the closest proximity to that unit. And I included a summary of parking in the staff report. Essentially with this change of use, although there is a different parking requirement, because the parking requirement is the same, right, as it would have been otherwise, were the parking not non-conforming, there's no requirement for them to provide additional parking on site. So we've kept that one for the residential unit, because again, it's closest to that unit, so it's most likely to be used in that fashion, as well as there's bike parking required for the short-term rental. So those are proposed along the side of.
Can you point out the bike parking? It's just
Yeah.
right here on the left-hand side, just down.
It's down
I
by
think
the
it's down.
vacation rental, yeah.
Just for,
Yeah, so it's in close relationship to the proposed short-term rental. So those will be provided for that unit. Yeah.
and let's see. Just kind of curious what your thoughts are when, kind of looking through and looking at alterations to non-conforming development, kind of your response to the staff report related to the exceptions, and when you're proposing one use to the next, and that it didn't necessarily meet the exceptions, or just part of the thought process there with and kind of the rationale for pushing that.
I think I'd go back to the idea of it seems like a non sequitur to me, in that if the house existed 3 feet to the left, then there would be no question about our ability to make this conversion, given that we fall within all the other requirements. And so that's why it seems like, and we've shown by the other arguments that 3 feet to the right doesn't really have an impact that is substantial or even at all. And so that's why it seems like it doesn't really asking for the modification is simply just because the house was built 87 years ago instead of after the setback was created. I don't know, is that?
Did you, I'm sorry, or were you going to add anything?
No.
Okay. Didn't want to cut you off. Okay, so I'm curious what your thoughts are. Did you get a chance to read the public comment? Or have any of you read the public comment? It was distributed prior to the meeting. I think I'd like to hear a little bit more about kind of the intentions for the short-term rental and the vacation rental, because it does come up, and you know, you're surrounded by a lot of residential units in the area, and you know, as proposed on site for the rear unit and maintaining that residential use. So again, what is your thought process for managing that, and kind of what's the intention there, and kind of your vision? And because again, that tends to alarm people when you're proposing that use.
Well, the reality is that with this kind of short-term rental, this is exactly what people are looking for when they want to rent a place like this. Is they want to be in a neighborhood, and when they come to Santa Barbara, they don't want to be in a hotel, you know, next to the restaurants. They actually want to experience being in a neighborhood. That's what makes a lot of Airbnbs so popular, is that it's more of that experience. And what's great about the way Santa Barbara has set up the zoning is that provides opportunity for a property for a unit that's less than 1,000 square feet. The city has provided a pathway for that, and it makes sense because this is going to be just one renter coming in. It's not going to be, it's not a big hotel, you know, that we're seeking to bring in lots of people that would be more disruptive to the neighborhood. So the clientele is the kind of person that wants the neighborhood experience. So, and so I don't know if you've ever stayed in Airbnb, but that's actually, that's where Airbnb really shines. So that's our intent here. And again, this property being in that zone and having the small market there, being a few blocks from downtown and the ocean, so it really situates it well for this use. And it also provides income to the city with the TOT tax, which I think should be a welcome change. So that, and we're, you know, and if, again, Airbnb is all about recommendations and how people rate it. So we're very concerned about making sure that our neighbors are happy, that the people that stay there are happy. You know, we make it very clear, we would make it very clear that that's an important part of this rental. And we have some experience with this because we have a legal rental elsewhere in this zone that the city, that was permitted and we got from the city, and it's gone really well. We haven't gotten any complaints from neighbors. It's basically the same size, and we've been able to pay TOT tax, which I think is a benefit to the city. So I don't know, that would be my response.
Forgive me, could you summarize the question for me again?
I'm just curious about kind of, you know, anytime someone, you know, it's been established, this zone is the RMH zone, which does allow hotel use, but our zoning ordinance has described that that it doesn't allow conversions from residential to non-residential use under certain recommendations. So you're asking for a modification to be able to alter the use within the setback. And following the public comments, a lot of people have anxiety about what it means to have a vacation rental right next to their units where they live, kind of what the impacts might be, noise, nuisance, parking, so even though you can kind of check off boxes of like, well, we're non-conforming to parking, so we don't require a parking space, but like, how are they going to, how is this managed? So how will you manage like all the potential nuisances and the concerns about that? So just kind of a reflection on how you're thinking about the neighbors' concerns.
I would just add to some of what David said. I think there are a couple of factors which already abate some of those concerns. The fact that it's next to mixed use already on one side, and that the multi unit on the other has a driveway buffer, so that helps to begin with. I would also say we are pretty careful in terms of how we filter our guests. We have pretty stringent criteria. Our price point will be intended to weed out some of the more cavalier type potential guests. We have noise curfews and various behavioral requirements which put deposits at risk if they're not conformed to. So it's very important to us that this is managed extremely well, the reviews are excellent, and the neighbors are happy. It's how we do what we do.
And what, you said there, in this neighborhood, you have another a permitted vacation rental? Is it
Yes.
on Bass Street or is
No.
it somewhere else?
No, it's on Castillo Street.
On Castillo. And I'm sorry, did you want to add something to that?
Oh, yeah, I would just wanted to say, well, I appreciate the public comments and people's concern, and I think we have those same concerns. We're also residents of Santa Barbara, so that's why we want to do this, so that we can, it can be legally permitted, it can be, the city can benefit from it, it can have the constraints that short-term rentals should. I think and I appreciate the fact that the city has allowed for this, because it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Santa Barbara is a destination location, and our economy benefits from people visiting. So I think this provides a really respectful way to bring that to our city within the confines that the city has allowed. And I would also say that these comments, while they live nearby, they are not direct neighbors. And so,
Well, I just pointed to the public
Yeah,
comment, but these are
right.
all considerations that
Sure.
I have as the staff hearing. It's
Sure,
just
I understand.
Reviewing this project.
Yeah, I understand.
And wanting to, again, kind of, as I think about the request in hand.
Yeah.
Curious kind of what your rationale was for again, changing it from residential to non-residential. Why?
Yeah, it just provides opportunity to do business in a way that is beneficial, we think, and it provides income in a different way. So and again, Santa Barbara being a destination town, this is a place, and we understand also the city's need for housing, and appreciate their wanting to make sure that the vacation rentals that do exist are doing it in a way that makes sense for the community.
And for the residents do you have residents currently in Unit 2 in the rear?
Yeah, yes.
And what are their thoughts, or have they weighed in on the proposal? I didn't hear from them, but I'm just curious if you have talked to them about what your proposed plans are, and if you got their input and had any feedback.
No.
Okay, and if you can go down a little bit, Ms. Von Protz, thank you. Again, I'm going to ask about that kind of rear area. So even though there's no necessarily door, what do you imagine is kind of happening at the back of for that? Because I know I'm seeing that you've got it just looks like, are you proposing to remove some of those storage areas, the sheds?
No, that's an area where you can see the trash cans are. That's sort of a utilitarian area where we have storage and trash cans. So that provides a buffer too between those two units.
And that's right here.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Sorry, I think I read it as existing concrete, but it looks like, is there gravel between, like the concrete stops, and is there gravel?
Yes, yeah, that's right. It's
Okay.
gravel.
And there's no windows on this side, you know what I'm saying? So this was just an opportunity place to put things and keep it out. And our trash cans are gonna go back here too.
Okay. So,
And that's right here too.
and I'm just curious why you didn't check in with them or if they had any thoughts about or concerns about the proposal.
And that's, yeah, you're talking of the renters in the second?
Yeah,
The renters, yeah, just because, I mean, assuming
Yeah.
that they plan to be there for a while and kind of, you know, just the most direct contact and the ones who would be most impacted potentially by the development.
yeah. I think we don't see that actually impacting them. That's our purpose, is that it, yeah.
Well, I guess with, again, you know, I want to I have rented my car, I want to drop off my stuff, I've got to find parking, I'm going to park in the driveway, you know, I don't know, you know, they don't necessarily know that there's a resident in the back. You know, you're trying to get to work, you're trying to pull out of your garage, so just kind of, you know, they're just anticipating that when you're new to town, you don't know everything. You know, I've used plenty of Airbnbs and know you're just trying to figure it out and not, you know, you have to go in, you got to open up the book, you got to figure out what's the deal. You're looking at your phone. You know, you might not find immediate parking on site, but you're just trying to like get in the door. So, again, just that there's that potential, and just kind of curious what
Yeah.
the rear neighbor would say.
But you're also looking at, if you look at this floor plan, again, 800 square feet. If you're looking at the floor plan, it's a two-bedroom, one-bedroom, two-bedroom house with two baths. You know, I mean, you're not going to get the 5 rental unit, the five that are next door. Yeah, again, it's a 2 rental house. I don't think you're going to get 20 people. You know?
I'm not necessarily worried about like, you know, 20 people. I'm just thinking about one car, one person, one, you know, like a couple or, you know, the kind of what you're saying is like you're describing it as like people who want to have the neighborhood experience in Santa Barbara. Again, I know what that's like as someone who seeks out opportunities in other cities and looking for these things. So I just kind of know like the mentality of operation and kind of knowing like
No, that-
you don't know what's
Yeah.
on site. So again, it is just trying to figure out, you know, if there are any concerns or site considerations or, you know, again, you're not proposing any additional improvements. You've got comments on kind of the rationale for your project and the interests, but just if there's just kind of curious why that didn't happen.
Well, I think that's a good consideration. And when we get to the point where we get the approval to do this and get the permit, then that I appreciate that consideration.
Okay, so I'm going to be really honest. This is a really hard one for me. It's truly difficult, and I'm really struggling with it.
Yeah.
And I see both sides, and that's just the situation.
Yeah.
I would really, I want to, I think I came in going, you know, ready for just looking at, like, I went out on site, going out, like, reading the zoning, trying to understand what my role is. I have to, like you were asking for, well, first of all, our zoning code allows certain types of development, and there are certain alterations to use with a non-conforming development, and then there are exceptions to that. And this is not what you're proposing is not called out as an exception. And so this is why you're asking for the modification. And then you've got compelling arguments, and, you know, there's no door at the rear, there's a driveway to the side. But I'm looking at what are the findings that I have to make, and I'm trying to go through each one. And I still couldn't necessarily get there from the beginning. But I think, but I'm, you know, I'm hearing you all, but I still have concerns about the rear neighbor and just them not even knowing necessarily, like they may have seen a yellow sign, but just the fact that, that they hadn't been consulted at all, I think it might be helpful. So, before I go either direction with a decision, I would like to, I'd like to postpone this to the next available show meeting, which is actually next week. Do you think it's feasible that you could connect with the rear neighbors and get their input on the project between that time?
I'm not, we'd have to get with our property development or property management company on that because we're not actually connected with that. So we'd have to get back to you on that.
So I could propose I could postpone this or to next week, next Wednesday, if you think that you can connect with them and get their thoughts, and or the next show hearing after that. So this is a special hearing. Normally we go every 2 weeks. So next week's kind of starts our regular 2 week cycle. So I could either postpone it to next Wednesday or 2 weeks from Wednesday, which is, what is that date? February 7th. Do you all have a preference? And we could try to aim for next week, and if that works, but if not, you could contact Ms. Plummer if you aren't able to connect with them, and then I could postpone it again if needed. But I'd really like to get their input, and I think part of it again is just what are the direct impacts on the site and for that particular neighbor, and just have that be part of the consideration. Because like I said, there's, I came in not being able to make the findings, and I'm listening to you, and I want to just try to be open-minded and just be able to use that and be able to hear if there's any other things that are not being considered.
So, what would you like to see from us? Would you like a letter saying that we have told them what's going on, and they should write you a letter saying that they understand that,
I don't want to mandate that. I think that might be a little much. I think I would like for them to know what the plans are. I'd like for you to talk to them. I mean, there are 3 of you, I don't know, there's a property manager, but just kind of, to reflect back what you heard and what their concerns are. If there are anything, like what are their concerns, if any? And what would, they use the site, like I did a site visit, but they live there, so they know all the ins and outs and the nuances and things that go on and how it's been used before and this and that. And so I guess I would just like to hear from them. Are there any other considerations for like other improvements that might help out or again buffer the 2 uses of the non-residential to the residential? So I'm not asking for a formal letter. Again, I don't want to put that on you to kind of have to do, but I just think it would be helpful for them to communicate if there are any concerns or additional thoughts or considerations. That would be helpful. So I would be asking for you to come back and share that with me. But again, no formal letter.
I think that's, I think how should I say this? I think most people that rent in Santa Barbara, wouldn't ask their tenants, about, and I understand what you're asking. It just seems that I think you're asking us, I think, to go above, and that's fine. I just, I don't think most landlords would ask their tenants what their feeling is on,
Well, I think they're renters and they, presumably plan to be there for a while, and so, or they have a sense of the site, and so it's really, again, my leaning was towards denial. I'm trying to.
No, I appreciate that.
Kind of
give
look
us
at this.
give us
So
the opportunity to.
This is where again I want to just be upfront about my opinion, and you had staff's recommendation going in. Again, you've outlined a number of things. I could make a decision today and just call it and then the 10-day appeal period, but I think that if I were thinking about an appeal to the Planning Commission, I just think there's a basic question of, did you talk to the people who live on site? And if that didn't happen, I think that's just part of your due diligence as applicants to be able to do that. And so whether it's typical or not, I think just kind of having that input, because again, they're the ones who are most familiar with the site,
Yeah.
especially if there's no current renter in unit 1 at the front unit. And, you know, the back unit, they might not be there, they might leave tomorrow, they might, but
Right.
still, they have a sense of the site that I don't have insight to.
Yeah.
And I just think that there's justification for getting their insight, because you are not proposing any other additional changes. And again, you are asking for a special, this is like a special thing that, again, our zoning, there's, it doesn't fall in with one of the exception requests. It doesn't call out it being able to do that as part of the non-conforming use, in spite of like solid, arguments for kind of going, kind of seeing from your perspective. So, so that's what I'd like, so I guess I would just like to hear from you all. I can postpone it to a date certain of next Wednesday. What is next Wednesday? The 24th. Hopefully you can connect with them by then. Again, and all I'm asking for you to do is just to say, yeah, we connected, they understand kind of what it is. Were there any thoughts that might be helpful? Again, and then, no, I'm not asking for any formal thing. I'm not asking them to write a letter. It's really you all just reporting back and saying you did part of your due diligence and as part of this project. And then, and if next Wednesday doesn't work, then I would postpone it again to the following staff hearing officer meeting. So if you all need more time.
Well, I know that we're both out of town next Wednesday.
Okay, so would you prefer the following, the February 7th date?
Let me just, make sure that works.
Or do you want Daniel to show?
I,
Could Daniel,
When?
next, on the 23rd?
or would you rather wait until,
After
you said, I'm sorry, the 7th of February is the next one? Okay.
In this way, if I can
Yeah.
continue it to a date certain, we don't have to renotice it, we don't have to charge you another
Got
mail
it, got it,
notice. So
okay.
that's
Can you
kind of
come on
the
Wednesday?
intention.
Next Wednesday, the 24th? Can we say yes for now, and then?
Yeah,
if
yeah,
for
and
some
then,
reason-
like I said,
okay.
even if next Wednesday rolls around and you have to postpone
just
it
be
again.
you. What,
So
Would it be the
well, how
same
about
time in
this?
the morning?
It would be at 9 a.m. in the morning.
Okay.
So if Daniel.
Let me
could-
double check. I'm not exactly sure when I'm leaving on Wednesday. I just know I'm leaving Wednesday.
So
Why don't
the safest thing to do, or the easiest thing to do would be to, for time's sake, I know you all want to get a decision. Next Wednesday is our regular show hearing. We could add it to the agenda, so I can postpone it to a date certain of January 24th. Again, if there, one of two things, if you aren't able to connect with the tenants at the rear, or if you have a schedule conflict at that meeting, I will postpone it again to another date certain, so we can avoid, again.
Let's do that.
the-
That gives
okay.
us the most
Okay, so
flexibility.
I'm going to, with the information provided to the applicant, I'm going to postpone this item to a date certain of Wednesday, January 24th, which is the next regular staff hearing officer meeting. And thank you all for being open and listening. Did you have a question?
Do you have time for another question?
Go ahead, if I may or may not answer it,
You
I
have to
can't
forgive me,
promise.
because I don't know protocol here either, so, but my question is, I'm curious, and this is a genuine question, it's not particularly loaded or with an agenda, I'm just curious, so I can learn. We have a property here in a designated area, in the correct zoning, which isn't abutting close to residential neighbors necessarily either. In that scenario, with that context in mind, I'm just curious, why would you be leaning towards denial, when from a layperson's perspective, everything I can see here seems to check all the boxes quite well?
I think, well, again, there are two pieces to this. If you look at code section 30.165.040, alterations to nonconforming development, which Ms. Plummer outlined in her staff report, there's a whole section on changes of uses and setbacks. So what you're requesting is a change of use in the setback and going from residential to non-residential. And it's technically discouraged, but there are, it's not allowed. And then but there are the zoning ordinance within that same section call out for exceptions for community gardening, a live-work unit, a market garden, or a neighborhood market. You're already next to a neighborhood market, which I know that these are like existing, it's been around for a long, who knows how long, probably a very long time, just like this particular development. But it's a special request, and what you're asking for doesn't fall into one of the exceptions. So that's why you're seeking a modification for a change of use in the interior setback. And so I look at section 30.250, which is talks about modifications. And my role as a staff hearing officer is a decision to grant for any other standard as provided in this chapter shall be based on the following findings. So I have to make findings, and they're very specific. And we can send you this. I can have Ms. Plummer send you this language, but that the modification is consistent with the general purposes of this title or the specific purposes of the zoning district in which the project is located. And the modification is necessary to accomplish any one of the following: to secure an appropriate improvement on a lot, prevent an unreasonable hardship due to the physical characteristics of the site or development or other circumstances, including but not limited to topography, noise exposure, irregular property boundaries, proximity to creeks, other unusual circumstances, or result in the development that's generally consistent with existing patterns of development for the neighborhood, or will promote uniformity of improvement to existing structures on the site, or D, construct a housing development containing affordable residential units rented, or, blah, 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 blah. I don't need to go into that one because it doesn't even apply to this project. So I have to look at both things. And I think, again, as part of your argument, you're telling me that I'm in the RMH zone. The RMH zone allows hotel use, which we understand short-term rental in our world is considered a hotel use. And but when you go to other sections of the code, as I walked you through, alterations to non-conforming development, it doesn't necessarily specify as an exception that there will be, for a hotel use to be something that could be an alteration to non-conforming development. So I have to be able to look at not only saying that it's consistent with the general purposes of the title or the zoning district, but I also need to be able to present a finding and make a finding for one of A, B, C, or D. And as I said, D doesn't even count because you're not proposing an affordable residential unit. So that's what I'm looking at. So I think if you, just to give you the, coming back, is to look at my findings and make the strongest argument again as to why you think how I should be able to make that finding and which one in particular. So that's kind of where I'm going with this. And I think that, but like I said, I could have gone one way and make a decision.
Right.
I'm really trying to be open-minded, and,
Yeah.
and I just want you to come in with something, because I think it could be appealed either way, potentially.
Yeah.
So, so that's where I'm standing right now.
I just want to say I
appreciate
really
that.
appreciate your consideration.
Okay, yeah. So I'm going to go ahead and close, or we'll go ahead and adjourn, because we have the direction is to postpone to a date certain of Wednesday, January 24th. There could be another update at that meeting, but that's for specifically. So again, everybody who's tuning in, or if there are the members, those who wrote into me to be aware of that, and more to come. So thank you all for, I appreciate the time, and thank you. And
Thank
I'll
you.
go ahead and adjourn today's meeting. That was the last item.